afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Nerd Tube. And it's time to do another Dark Side of the Ring review. I'm here with Shredder Lives On,
Thanks for having me.
and thank you to Victor. And I'm also with Dixie. How you doing, mate?
Guten Tag, wie geht's? Du bist so gut.
Very good. Well, here we are in season four, and this is episode seven. Abdullah the Butcher. And Abdullah the Butcher is one of those hardcore wrestlers who took things to the extreme. And I have to say that I'm very happy that for once we got an episode that wasn't to do with drugs and self destruction. Now, self destruction usually does play a part in character pieces when it comes to Dark Side of the Ring, but it kind of went down a different avenue, so to speak. And there was a lot of unanswered questions, well, a couple regarding who Abdullah the Butcher really is. But it was a fascinating insight. What we still had certain elements that kind of resembled, other wrestlers in the past. Regarding rags to riches, living in you know a you know a little shithole, and then being able to provide for your family by making it in the industry. Abdullah the Butcher was no different in that sense, but there was controversy regarding some of the things he would do to get himself over, and what he had done to other wrestlers. This was a little bit more fascinating, and I would say a little bit better. And it was good to see that Abdullah Butcher, regardless of what he's been through in his life and the physique he's had, that he's still with us. He's still alive, and that's quite
Yeah,
amazing. You know what I mean? I mean, he must be in his 80s now. You know, and he looked okay for a man in his 80s, if that's the case, regardless of all the grooves in his head. Shredder, before we start breaking down this episode, what did you think?
I was actually quite disappointed in this episode, if I'm perfectly honest. This has probably
Fair enough.
been the weakest episode of the season. And the reason I say this is because it was a 50-50 split, of course. The first half of the episode was about a brief synopsis of Abdullah's rise in professional wrestling and his style. And the latter half focused mostly on his current financial hardship and also the incident involving him giving hepatitis C to Devin Hannibal Nicholson. So there's more that could have been explored in this. The wrestlers that they had on, I would have preferred if they had maybe somebody else other than who they had, for the simple reason that there are a number of people involved in the business who were very, very critical of Abdullah the Butcher. They basically said he was a shitty, lazy worker. Now, he was an attraction, that's true. I don't think he ever remained in a territory for any reasonable length of period. And he was basically this big monster attraction who would come in to face off against the top babyface. But yeah, I I I felt there was no positive at the end of this episode. A lot of the stuff I felt also was Abby working, as far as he's been known to do throughout his entire career.
Abby?
Yeah, Abdullah.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
you
sorry.
shorted. Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah, Abby. Yeah, my bad. Um, yeah, fair enough. I can understand. Yeah, I think when it comes to people in this industry, you never know when they're not working and when they are shooting. So yeah, I can totally understand. Quick before we go on to you, Dixie, quick comment here from cousin Burrito.
okay.
I just like when he adopted the gimmick of Big Daddy V. Oh, I think when Big Daddy V
Oh,
adopted it, yeah.
yeah, I remember
And
that
hello,
vaguely.
Mr.
Wasn't he with
System 96.
WCW when he did that?
No, he's taking the
Who
piss. Eddie
he's
V
taking
was
the piss.
Viscera.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Mabel. So Dixie, and you just quickly finished this episode just now. How did you
Yeah,
find it?
I mean, I don't want to say it's one of the weaker versions of weaker episodes of Dark Side of the Ring, but I mean, the thing is, it was about a living wrestler that's still alive, and eh, I don't know. It wasn't like It wasn't something like focusing on, say, the Montreal Screwjob or any part of wrestling history that's really heavy. It was a guy who had hepatitis C and liked to bleed a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
not I mean, knock it. It just wasn't as powerful as, say, like the plane ride from hell, for instance.
I guess. I mean, I have to say, I personally found this to be one of the more squeamish episodes because seeing him with that fork and what he was doing, it was very hard to tell if he was genuinely stabbing people in the head. You know, and obviously with the blade jobs and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
him going all Freddy Krueger with his fucking finger knives and shit. It was it was difficult to watch at times, for the sake of entertainment. But I will say this: seeing the audience running for their lives because he's coming out the ring and they are genuinely shitting themselves brought a fucking huge smile to my face because those days of kayfabe, you can never get them back again. And that was one of the most amazing things about wrestling back then when people
Oh yeah,
thought it
when
was
people
real.
thought it was real, yeah.
And you see someone like Abdullah the Butcher covered in his own blood, probably his opponent's blood, walking out the ring, and you've got several people all like stampeding over themselves. You know what I mean? To get the fuck out of there.
Yeah,
I've
you will
never seen
never
any.
have
Yeah,
kayfabe like that ever again.
I've
That
never
used to
seen
happen
anything
with,
like that where people are running in fear of a wrestler.
well, no, that used to happen as well with Bruiser Brody, and we saw that in the very
Yeah.
first season of Dark Side of the Ring when they showed
Oh,
clips of
okay.
that where the fans would run away from Brody because they thought he was legitimately nuts. It's also happened with a couple of other gimmicks over in Japan too. I was actually quite surprised they didn't show or discuss probably Abdullah's biggest rival in his career, which was Bruiser Brody.
Didn't Bruiser
Okay.
Brody die from getting stabbed in like a locker room or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They discussed that in the very first season of
That's what I
Darkseid. That
thought.
was by Jose Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mabel was. Yeah, the guy who almost broke fucking Kevin Nash in half. I saw every time I watch that when I see him jump on Kevin Nash's back, it
Oh
makes me
yeah, that makes
wince.
me wince. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, makes me wince, man. Yeah, I mean, a regular person would have been paralyzed by that, in my opinion. You know. Anyway, um, so we get to know Abdullah's life a little bit when he's younger, and apparently he wasn't that good in school. So much so that he couldn't read or write, which became a bit of a controversial issue
Well, it's
regarding all
definitely a
of this.
controversial issue because it's considered potentially a massive work by Abby and his relatives. Because
Yeah.
there's another interview out there where Abdullah says that he was kicked out of school at the age of 16.
Okay,
So
yeah,
on the one hand, he's basically said previously that he was kicked out at the age of 16. Here, he's saying that his education was only second grade.
yeah. I mean, we're not saying that the guy is a fucking is like like a high school graduate or anything, but
Yeah,
we
he's
do
not like a
believe that he had.
rocket surgeon or
No,
something like
Yeah,
that.
oh
but
no,
we
no,
do
no,
believe that. Yeah, but we do believe he
but
had a basic grasp of reading and writing. Would you say?
I would say so because it was pointed out by a couple of people in the episode that he knows how to sign checks, he knows how to read a menu at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Um, uh, now, uh, also compare and contrast to say a guy like Jerry Blackwell. Jerry Blackwell in the AWA, he couldn't read or write; he was illiterate. Now, Abdullah has ran several businesses. Abdullah has signed multiple contracts to different companies. Abdullah um, has supposedly handwritten a letter to Devin Nicholson. So how I'm sorry, I have a hard time buying that his education is literally only second grade and he does not know how to read or write. I think it probably is more likely that yeah, he was maybe kicked out of school at the age of 16.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, but
I
even
have to
into
agree with
yeah,
that, Phony Beetle.
yeah, he's one of the greatest of all time. Um, for me, what really made me question it was when you heard Mick Foley So he knew how to read a menu. I mean, obviously, Devin Hannibal. You could think he's a bit biased regarding how he feels about Abdullah saying that he can read. Abdullah saying that he can't read, and the people in his family saying he can't read. But then when you got somebody who's got no dog in the fight, like Mick Foley saying that he's seen him read. I think there was somebody else who mentioned as well regarding writing checks. I think it was the guy who played his manager, the Latin guy.
Hugo Savinovich.
Yeah. And they mentioned that too, and that was news to them. It was new. It was definitely it was new for Hugo because he's been with Abdullah for a long time. I mean, you can say that in the gimmick that he can't read or write because that's the gimmick, but you don't expect your gimmick to be who you genuinely are when it comes to you being a regular person. So he probably was very surprised by that. And during the course of being with somebody for that long, at some point you're going to see them read or write, maybe in some capacity, like a menu, for instance, as you said. So yeah, I think it
Abdullah
will
has
work.
incentive. Abdullah has incentive for carrying on with this claim that he can't read or write, and it's twofold. One is the fact that he is trying to claim that his loss to Devin Nicholson in court over the Hep C case was because he couldn't read the legal letters. Now, that might be the case. I don't know. But the other one is that Abdullah the Butcher has had a crowdfunder on the go since January of 2022. Effectively, it was set up supposedly by a member of his family, but it was trying to raise money for him with a $60,000 target on GoFundMe to try and assist him because he is handicapped in a walker and can't read or write, and supposedly that's hampered him financially.
Yeah.
And he's raised $10,000 so far.
Well, in his early years, and we'll get back to this, I think maybe if we can find a reason to, but in his early years in school, he was a little bit gangster. He would buy candy, sell it at a higher price in school, stuff like that. Get people, people owed him money. He would be following them and stuff like that. And then for some bizarre reason, he was involved in martial arts, but it was never really truly explained how he got involved in martial arts. But he just, from 1 minute he's in school, next thing you know he's teaching elderly people martial arts, and that's
that
when somebody
surprise
said,
me. I think again that's more bullshit on his part because
Yeah,
those were the days where you could
get away
open
with
up
that.
a fake karate school. And in his
"Oh
case,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he's claimed, for example, that he's a seventh Dan.
What?
yeah."
No, no,
And
no, no.
maybe in pie eating contests, yeah, but
Maybe.
not not in martial arts. But I've noticed with fake martial artists, and I've seen a few clips on YouTube of fake martial artists. They're
Well, if
fat
you
as
want,
fuck.
sorry, if you
You know what
want
I mean?
fake martial arts, look up Ashita Kim sometime.
Yeah,
There's some really fascinating ones, and how how absolutely fake they are. Is and like they're all fucking like humongously, fat as well, like big beer guts or stuff like that. Nevertheless, uh but back to this, and so through Abdullah's account, he says that somebody said, whilst he was doing martial arts, that he should be involved in wrestling, and he said that's bullshit. But then somebody mentioned money to him. That obviously raised his eyebrows. He thought, okay, let's do it. And that's when he got to meet the Sheik, and you can see the similarities between him and the Sheik straight away. Because the Sheik also had those grooves in his head, just like Abdullah would end up having himself during the course of his career. But Abdullah the Butcher, like, what's his ethnic background? Because it was very hard to tell because he played a Sudanese guy
yeah,
in the
he's a fat
ring.
black guy from Canada.
Yeah,
Okay, so he's got no North African connections whatsoever.
No,
He's not like Somali or something like that. No.
no,
nope.
he's just literally a fat guy. He's just literally a fat guy from Canada.
Fair enough. But yeah, then they and obviously back at that time with the Sheik being the only sort of Middle Eastern wrestler. This is before the Iron Sheik came on the scene. Abdullah decided to also be a Middle Eastern wrestler, but because of, I believe, his limited ability because he wasn't the leanest fucker on the planet. He went down the hardcore route. There's a couple of comments here. fake martial Fake martial artist like Steven Seagal. Yeah, exactly like that, mate.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
Well, I mean, technically, Steven
Guy from
Seagal isn't a
Canada.
fake martial arts per se. It's just a martial art he purports to use is stupid, which is Aikido.
Yeah,
Although people flop around like fish and act like they're being tortured in the most deadly
Oh, yeah,
holds
yeah.
possible when it comes to Seagal. So there's a lot of fakery going on.
Oh, there is. I'm not saying there's not, there's a lot of fakery going on. But technically, it's a martial art. A
is
very
it a Japanese martial art? Yeah,
Aikido is Japanese. Yes.
it kind of because the way when I see him, sorry to go on a tangent here regarding Steven Seagal, but when I see him perform in his movies and stuff, it feels like it's got a very sort of sumo style with him pushing people away and slapping them away,
Well,
and
a lot of it
obviously
is slaps and pushes.
upper body, yeah, with all upper body, all punches and hardly any kicks. You
A
know,
lot of flips and stuff like that.
yeah, a bit of judo as well. You know, so yeah.
There's judo aspects that he does, but it's not judo per se.
Yeah, with the flips and stuff. That's what I'm saying. It feels more like a slim man sumo. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a
yeah,
very good way of putting it. Slim Man's version of sumo.
yeah. All right. So I'm just trying to recall this particular episode. So, um, as soon as he gets into the ring and he starts having his style, and his style is basically blood. Lots of fucking blood. People are getting he's cutting people up. They're cutting him up. That's when we start to see the famous scenes of people being scared of him and everything. But he becomes a massive draw. He's absolutely over. And Mick Foley famously said in this episode, one of the best things about Abdullah is that when you were in a match with him, it wasn't necessarily about titles, and stuff like that. He made matches important because it was about walking away with your life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think his
I-
exact words were, "You were generally cheering for your favorite wrestler to win. When Abdullah came into the territory, you were hoping for your favorite wrestler to survive."
yeah. Bossman says, Abby scared people in this with they did his career more because people would move when he was there. I agree with fourth. We missed that I don't know what the fuck he's saying.
Neither
But
do I.
no offense, boss man, you got to proofread your shit before you press that enter button. Um, Okay, so I'm sorry. Some of it becomes a bit of a blur because obviously, before we get onto Devon and Hannibal, um, for a good portion of this, it was just him having crazy matches. I think there was one match where he was in an electric chair and shit.
Yeah,
That was
that was
that was
WCW, wasn't it?
WCW.
Yep.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Some of that sort of stuff. I think we've seen stuff like that before. Even in WWE, we saw fucking Undertaker, kill Paul Bearer by drowning him in cement.
Oh, the concrete crypt match. Yeah.
Oh god, that was so stupid. Just for Paul Bearer to come back, and he ends up being by the Undertaker's father and Kane's father. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But
I think
anyway,
they were
going
just
to
throwing shit at the wall, see what would stick. Really.
yeah. Abdullah was part of that old school regime of wrestlers that even in the outside world they would still have to maintain kayfabe and not break out of character. So people would always think that they are crazy. He would do things like eat raw meat and stuff like that. Oh, Shredder's gone. Hopefully he'll be back. Yeah, he's back. He would
There
do
he
things
is.
like He would eat raw meat. He'd eat all bizarre things. Yeah, he was absolutely nuts. He kind of reminded me of Kamala to a degree. Kamala would be this like bizarre,
He'd be
quiet type
weird,
character in the
but yeah, he
background.
wouldn't be like Abdullah type weird. Abdullah was
No.
kind of like the Ozzy Osbourne of wrestling. in a sense, and
Yeah,
not in a
yeah,
good way.
yeah. Okay,
It's
so
almost a
Bossman
it's
back.
almost a precursor to the Boogeyman, because the Boogeyman used to eat raw liver and then he would eat
Yep.
worms.
Yeah, but yeah,
Or
Boogeyman
Booger
was
Bastion.
unfortunately with Boogeyman, like he was the wrong wrestler for the wrong time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Talentless guy who went tried to be like a Abdullah Mark II in the era that didn't want that shit. Was saying the Fiend had that scary aura, Abby that had that what we miss, which is a guy fans were legit scared of.
Nobody was
Yeah,
scared of the Fiend.
New.
when you see the Fiend, you're talking about Undertaker.
Bray Wyatt, he's talking about.
Yeah,
Oh,
Bray
Bray
Wyatt.
Wyatt, sorry. Yeah, because the guy's fucking husky fat ass, man. People know that who he once was. He is part of that legacy thing as well, and
The
not legacy, but yeah,
The
the
Wyatt
second
family,
generations.
yes. The Wyatt family was tremendous. The Fiend, no.
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, we're talking post kayfabe here, boss man. No
Mhm.
one's scared. Like people are very aware, and all of that. If anything, they're more likely to admire him, for you know being able to change character and reinvent himself, which is always a good thing. So yeah. So where was I? Regarding Abdullah the Butcher, he was making lots of money, and he was making a name for himself. But unfortunately for him, because of how crazy he was never going to actually get into the WWE. I think Vince McMahon realized that he was just a level beyond, and maybe if he was a bit younger, he could have ended up being in WWE during the Attitude Era and
No, I don't
had
think
some
so.
classics with Mick Foley. No,
No. Initially, there was talk about bringing Bruiser Brody into the WWF to face Hulk Hogan. There had been
hmm
talk as well, potentially, about bringing in Abdullah the Butcher, but Vince McMahon wasn't interested. Namely because the WWF really had a no blood policy at that point, and that's all Abdullah did. He would just bleed
Yep.
buckets in his matches.
yeah,
Meanwhile, there was discussion. I think it was Cornette pitched bringing Abdullah the Butcher in '96 when they brought in Mick Foley, and again there was no interest there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
again,
for
that's
sure.
probably due to the fact that yeah, all Abdullah did was just bleed buckets.
Yeah, he wasn't the most mobile guy. That's for sure. It's amazing how much people respected him in the industry when the reality is that he was a shitty wrestler. He wasn't technically sound. He probably didn't have much stamina either, but he just was able to have a good. He had a high pain threshold, and he bled. And obviously, his gimmick scared the shit out of people as well. He looked like an unstoppable monster. It was like watching a horror movie come to life, and those are the things that went for him. But we are talking post kayfabe era, so people believed in that shit. Someone like Abdullah the Butcher came out now, nobody would give a flying fuck. As we mentioned earlier, look at the Boogeyman, one of the biggest failures ever in wrestling. That guy would smash a fucking clock over his head and eat worms. Nothing, nothing. You know
But
what I mean?
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said gimmick, because that's all he was. And
Yeah,
you talk about all the guys who had respect for him. Well, there's a lot of guys who had no respect for him. Tracy Smothers didn't respect Abdullah the Butcher. Honky Tonk Man has no
Yeah,
respect for
Honky
Abdullah the
Tonk did
Butcher.
not have any respect for him.
Jerry
yeah,
Jarrett didn't have any respect for him. Jake Roberts, no respect for him. The Rougeaus, no respect. There's a lot of people who just viewed him as being a subpar, shitty worker and nothing but gimmick. And there's other people who took issue with the fact that yeah, Abdullah did take advantage of either young guys, greenhorns in the business, or referees or managers.
yeah. I was surprised not to hear more from wrestlers who didn't have who. I mean, obviously we know that Devin Hannibal was going to have his personal reasons regarding Abdullah, but the only other person of significance who fans might know would be Tony Atlas, and he was pretty much on Abdullah's side
Hmm.
throughout all of this. There was no like, we've seen people like Jake the Snake on Dark Side in the past. Surprised he wasn't there to give his opinion, as well as maybe a couple of other guys. But yeah, fair enough. I guess I guess Abdullah himself didn't want it to be a hit piece, too much of a hit piece, so to speak. It was like, okay, we got a couple of guys who like me, a couple of guys who hate me. We'll let you decide. And obviously, you have people like Mick Foley, who's highly respected. He's the one guy who's been in the industry, he's been battered to shit, but doesn't seem like he'll be an episode of Dark Side of the Ring himself. Funnily enough, so. All right. We saw that famous scene with him on that talk show. He couldn't help himself, could he? He could have
Nope.
just walked off and ended the episode, but no, he had to fucking attack the host. And what is it with wrestlers doing shit like that? We've seen Hulk Hogan choke out a guy. Obviously slap heard around the world, all of that. That particular host deserved it in my opinion, because he's an asshole. But nevertheless, he
Vader roughing up the talk show host in
Yep.
Kuwait.
yeah, exactly. Wrestlers are really stupid. Now, I have seen John Cena put Graham Norton on his shoulders to do an attitude adjustment, but he didn't do it, and he was very, very cautious with what he was doing. He was just showing him like kind of the move without executing the move,
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't
and
try to.
yeah, he didn't fucking try to put him through the fucking floor, but and but like people like what Abdullah was doing. I mean, that's a potential lawsuit right there. What he was doing, I'm surprised he never got fucking sued. And then Devon comes along trying to save the moment by taking away the female co-host and shit like that. What the fuck? It was absolutely crazy, absolutely bizarre. You know, I'm very glad that those moments are over. As much as and I'm happy that kayfabe is no longer with us. It's moments like that I'm glad we don't have anymore, because it's fucking ridiculous. Like, regular people shouldn't be having their heads poked in by a fucking fork, and having a
Yep.
man twice their size and twice their strength put them in fucking headlocks and chokeholds. It's not right. You know what I mean? So protect them, protect the business. Even now, Zam, it's done. Yeah, well, we can blame Vince McMahon for that, and obviously the clique. But eventually, it was going to come out regardless. It was never. I mean, wrestling was always going to end up being exposed for being predetermined at some point, whether it be Vince McMahon or the clique or whatever. It was always going to happen, in my opinion. So, yeah. Um. All right. Anything more to add, fellas, before we go on to the next part of this?
I really
No.
don't have anything to add.
Okay. We do meet some of his family members. We got to meet his brother. We got to meet his sister, and that woman who worked in the charity. Would that end up being his partner or
No,
just a
no,
close friend?
as far as I'm aware, she's his carer.
Yeah,
His carer.
caretaker.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But throughout all of this time, there was one person who looked upon Abdullah as a mentor. He never said father figure. I'm glad he never said that, but definitely a mentor, maybe more of an uncle than anything. And that was Devon Hannibal. What was his surname? I keep calling him Devon
Nicholson,
Hannibal. Nicholson. Fair enough.
or to give him his
And
proper title, Slow Devon.
yeah, fair enough. I mean,
The worst thing to happen to wrestling podcasts since, well, ever.
look, but you can't blame the guy for trying something else, because his career was cut short as a
No,
wrestler
but
because of.
I can blame him for being a clueless asshole.
Okay, all right. Look, I personally don't watch his stuff, so I give no credence to what he is. He's like as a podcaster, but at the same time, he wants to remain in the industry in whatever capacity he can. And so I think this is probably the best avenue for him. He never really got himself over as a wrestler, because he was out of the business before he had a chance to be in the business because of what happened with him and Abdullah. But
Well, no, he's still in the business. He still wrestles. And did I not fucking call it last
really?
week? Did I not
You
call it
did.
last
You
week
called
when I
it.
said, are they going to cover Devin Nicholson mutilating a referee?
And yeah, we did. I know I am going to get to that, but initially, he was working with Abdullah. I'm surprised Abdullah never gave hepatitis to anybody else, or did he?
No, Hannibal's the only case known.
Fair enough. And yeah, and because of that, when Hannibal ended up, in the match with Abdullah, where they did have lots of back and forth, teaming with each other and fighting against each other. But eventually, Hannibal had his opportunity to be involved in the WWE. I personally couldn't remember any of that, but nevertheless, he was in there. They do their blood test policy, and they find that he's got a rare case of hepatitis C, and that's when he was let go, and then Devon was able to work his way back and realize that the person who gave it to him was Abdullah the Butcher, who has been it has been verified that he has that same strain of hepatitis C, but Abdullah the Butcher himself has also said that he hasn't got it, and then at one particular point he said that he got it from Devon. So
Yep.
Abdullah's unfortunately comes across as a bit of a bullshit artist. You
He is.
know,
He's a massive
yeah.
bullshit artist.
Yeah.
He had a personal beef with New Jack over that too. I mean, New Jack provided his blood test and dared Abdullah the Butcher to do the same. Abdullah wouldn't.
Fair enough. So, unfortunately for Devin Hannibal, Nicholson, he wasn't able to work with the WWE, and then he took his grievances out on Abdullah the Butcher once he realized it was probably him that gave him hepatitis C, and it was all with dirty blades and stuff like that. Um, I think that we're talking about a time when people are less aware of hygiene and cleanliness and stuff like that, and things like hepatitis C would be. I'm not condoning this. I'm just saying. Over the years, we are a little bit more self aware of certain things and how we operate, and I just didn't think that these guys would probably think that dirty blade would be such an issue, even
But
though it should be.
no. This was 2009, for Christ's sake. Everybody knew
Oh,
about
fair enough.
the potential risk of this kind of transmission. I mean, we've had
God,
years
all right, I sound
of
naive.
we've had years of people um, contracting bloodborne illnesses from sharing dirty needles.
Yeah, good point.
Uh,
Good point.
on,
Yeah.
on top of that, I mean, Tommy Dreamer has been on record about the fact that he would get AIDS tested regularly while he worked for ECW.
Holy shit. I mean, I
because
guess other
because
wrestlers would
because of
have
how
to.
often because of how often he would he would do blade jobs and how often he would be bleeding over another wrestler. He frequently would get AIDS tested.
Yeah.
So
You
this was a case of the cardinal rule in the business of pro wrestling is if you're gonna get bladed, you use a clean blade, and the blade is used on only one person. You don't fucking share a blade. If you
Yeah.
can, you
Started
do the
after
blade
you.
you do the blade job yourself. You don't ask somebody else to cut you. I mean, that's where you've wound up with Abdullah slicing guys from ear to ear. It's where you've wound up with guys like New Jack slicing open mass transit.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
And then once again, just going back to the images of using the fork. God knows how many times that fucking fork was used. And all of that. Like, you could tell that Abdullah would get carried away. He would be lost in his character and stuff. When it comes to performances, absolute nutcase. And yeah, the lack of hygiene cost him and cost Devin Hannibal and Nicholson as well, and cost him a career that who knows what would have happened if he was never contracted with hepatitis C. We might
I
be
don't
seeing him in
think he would have ever
WrestleMania right
progressed. I
now.
mean, no. I don't
I'm
think
just
No.
taking the piss. I'm
I
taking the
honestly
piss.
don't. Hannibal was such a fucking unprofessional jackass. There's no way he'd have even got through developmental. I mean, hell,
Yep.
Luchasaurus never made it through developmental.
Well,
Juice Robinson didn't fucking make it through developmental.
Well, regarding Hannibal, even though he had a massive falling out with Abdullah and they went to court and all of that, he still wrestled even on the independent circuit after being let go from the WWE, and you saw him masked, and then for some bizarre reason he fucked over a referee.
Well, you're skipping over a fair bit here, Zam.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Right,
Please remind me.
Nicholson underwent experimental treatment to try and cure him of hepatitis C, which eventually did work. A lot of it was funded by superstar Billy Graham. Superstar Billy Graham was also incredibly vocal about his displeasure at Abdullah the Butcher going into the Hall of Fame. He said that he wanted his name taken out of it if Abby was going in. But when it came to Nicholson, Nicholson sued Abdullah the Butcher. He got a judgment in his favor of $2.3 million, which, to my knowledge, Abdullah has never paid.
Yeah, that was mentioned by Devon in the documentary. He hasn't got to see a penny of it, and Abdullah's obviously using the fact that he can't read or write as one of the reasons why he's not paying, because he doesn't understand the fucking documentation that's given to him.
Allegedly,
even though we've also covered that as well regarding if he could read or write or not. So are you saying that Devon Hannibal Nicholson hasn't got hepatitis C anymore?
Yeah, I'm saying that. Devon Nicholson was cured of Hep C.
How did he get cured of Hep C? I thought it was like a death sentence, pretty much.
No, there are cures for it now. Like I said, Hannibal underwent experimental treatment.
Okay.
His blood work is testing clean. But
he ended up infecting that referee, though, didn't he?
No, well, yes and no. It wasn't the case that he infected the referee. What happened was, it was an event. I believe it was in Texas, and he was working as a gimmick called the Blood Hunter, where he wears a mask and he hunts blood. He insists that somebody is going to bleed in the matches at all times.
God.
This referee was brought in supposedly because he had experience doing blade jobs. Nicholson repeatedly stabbed this guy in the head over and over again with a spike, and he punctured one of the referee's arteries. And my understanding is that, yes, the referee in question, he wound up with an infection from it. He wound up with a blood infection.
I said it wasn't hepatitis, but an infection. Nevertheless.
Yeah, he wound up with
or something like that.
I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, but he wound up with an infection, and he wound up having to get multiple stitches and surgeries to try and fix the damage done.
I just don't get it.
I'm still amazed that fucking Hannibal wasn't prosecuted for that.
I just don't get like wrestlers in modern day, because I'm very happy that blading is no longer a thing anymore, but it's fucking stupid. If you bleed, let it happen naturally and just go on with it, and maybe thank your lucky stars that there is a bit of blood there, because it just adds to the match. But let it happen naturally. Don't force it.
Blading's not a thing anymore. Have you not watched AEW?
I know,
John
right?
Moxley fucking bleeds every goddamn week.
I'm so sorry. I don't watch AEW. I do apologize. I have no idea. Okay, I'll take that back. What I'm trying to say is what I really was trying to get at was blading people who are not expecting it. Like, you shouldn't be blading a referee. Blade yourself. Don't blade people. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, that's the thing. The referee supposedly was, he had experience of doing a blade job, and that's why he was supposed to be there for that segment. But Nicholson didn't feel he was bleeding enough and decided to keep stabbing him in the head repeatedly with a spike. And he went on this fucking podcast and said, "Yeah, he was hired because he's a bleeder."
Okay, so I'm glad you guys educated me as somebody who no longer watches the business anymore. But Bossman says Hannibal's one of these deathmatch idiots. I hate these matches if there's no talent around. blading happens still. Yeah, I'm dead against it. I think blading is fucking stupid. It doesn't need to happen. I think bleeding should happen naturally. You know, that's fine by me, and then you could obviously sell it that way, but don't fucking force it. It's ridiculous. You don't need to sell us on blood. Everyone knows that wrestling is predetermined. You start blading yourself and stuff like that. It
Yeah,
just
they're gonna know.
it's just
Well,
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
it can be done well and it can add drama to a match. I mean, for example, the sight of Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13 locked in that sharpshooter with the blood pouring down his face. I mean,
Yes,
wouldn't have been the same.
no, yeah, I agree, but I once again I think we're in a different era now. When I think of Mick Foley getting his head smacked over repeatedly, when I think of Eddie Guerrero going a bit too deep on his head against JBL, you
Hmm.
know, like I just think like I just feel that era that some things need to be put, like locked into a history vault, and we've moved on from that. Like we don't do chair shots to the head anymore. I'm not sure if AEW still does. You know what I mean? But I know WWE does it, and I never want chair shots to the head ever again. You know what I mean? Somebody might whack you over the head with a kendo stick if that cuts you open. Fair enough, sell it. You know what I mean? But other than that, I just feel that blading should be put in the dustbin of history. Personally, you know what I mean? I just don't think it's worth it. You know, it's just too dangerous. Um, that's just my opinion. Um, it's okay if agreed upon, but not. Yeah, but it's still it's still dangerous. I mean, they're in a dangerous sport as it is. You don't need to
I
add
agree.
add extra elements of danger to something that could kill you. You know, or in an industry that could possibly kill you anyway. So, yeah, I think this is something that needs to be moved on. I do agree with you. Certain things from the past, I get it, and we can look fondly at it, but we don't need to move on. We can move on from it. That's all I'm saying. All right. So regarding the lawsuits and stuff, that's when we get to the controversy regarding if Abdullah the Butcher could read or write. Some people says he can. Some people say he can't. Um, is he still playing the gimmick? I'm not so sure. Abdullah, when he was asked about Devon, he never really wanted to speak about him. He wanted to move on. I think maybe he wanted to move on because it was a tricky subject for him, and he might end up getting caught in some lies if that was the case, which is why he probably didn't want to speak about it. Would you
More
guys
than
agree
likely.
with that?
Oh, more than likely, because again, he's repeatedly said that he doesn't have hepatitis C, and then obviously, as you mentioned, he said, "Well, yeah, I do have hepatitis C, but I got it from Devin Nicholson."
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So he's on a walker right now. Um, and wait, how old is Abdullah the Butcher? Anyone want to quickly Google that?
Oh God, let's have a look. Abdullah is 82.
What? Wow,
82.
how do you live that long?
How's he still alive?
I know,
You know
right?
what I mean? Yeah, I mean, but nevertheless, he looks good for his age. I'll be honest with you. You know, he doesn't look. Yeah, even seeing him there, he doesn't look like haggard. You know, yeah, obviously he's older. He's going to be on the walker. He's in his 80s. You know, he's out of shape and all of that. But he hasn't got that haggard feature about him that some people might have, who've been around the block a bit too much. So
But you look at all those
I
scars on his head from
yeah.
all the times he's bladed. I think if it was Mick Foley that previously said that he's seen the guy put poker chips in there.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, I was looking at that. You know, he looks his head looks like a fucking, you know, a skid mark on the road. I know other wrestlers have had scars on their heads like that. I think Dusty Rhodes, he had
Yeah,
scars on his
that's the
head.
road thing.
New
Yeah,
Jack.
for sure. New Jack. Yeah. Um, I'm not sure who else. If you can name a few.
Well, guys with scar tissue in their heads.
Yeah, like grooves,
Ra-
pretty much.
Ric Flair,
Raven.
yeah. Raven's a big one too.
Raven. Oh, fair enough. What about the Sandman? But he always bled.
He's got some of that.
Fair enough.
Didn't
Fair enough.
didn't Animal used to have that from the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk? Didn't he have tread marks like that?
I think so. Who's the other one I'm thinking of? Oh yeah, Dennis Condrey from Midnight Express.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
Because I remember the story was being told as well that when the Midnight Express went to New York to talk with Vince McMahon, and Vince said, we don't do any of this. And Condrey's apparent response was, "What? How the fuck do you get anything over then?"
By the way, I did forget to mention how massive Abdullah was in Japan. I mean, the guy was involved in commercials. They made anime and manga from his likeness. He was absolutely massive out there. You know, which is testament to him. I guess I don't know how much money was squandered because somebody like him would have made a fair buck, in my opinion. But
You would think.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
he said he gave a lot of it to his family. I mean, he
Yeah.
told the story about how his mother was scrubbing on her hands and knees and scrubbing the floor of a funeral home,
yeah.
and he
No,
decided after he made some money, to tell her you're never working again.
no doubt. I'm sure, but he must have made a decent amount. And like some people can, there are famous people are renowned for like taking care of their families anyway. But the fact that he's got nothing left to show for it, and he's been making money. He mentioned all these different business ventures, and all these. When it comes to sponsorship and advertisement, that's where the fucking bucks is at. That's where the real money's at. And like he was in Japan doing all of that, and he never got any money for. I mean, he obviously would have got money for that, but the fact is that there's nothing for him to show for it now. It's kind of remarkable. I'm not sure. Apparently, he's hidden some of his assets, but it's all hearsay, so we're not so sure. I mean, he's done Alex Jones, so to speak. So
Yeah.
yeah. So all right. So that was pretty much his life. Him and Devin Hannibal are still going to be going at each other probably until maybe Abdullah dies. Whether Devin sees
That
a penny from him, I don't know. But then again, they're birds of a feather. Those two guys, they're both fucking idiots.
No,
So
like I said, I called it last week when I said, look, are they going to show Devin Nicholson mutilating a referee? And lo and behold, they did, which I'm
Yep.
pleased to see. It wasn't just all one sided against Abdullah the Butcher in this case. There was no babyface in this program.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. No, nobody comes out looking good in this. I mean, yeah, regarding Devon, and at one point I was on his side until they showed you him mutilating that referee, and I thought, fuck this guy. I know you had your issues regarding him being a shit podcaster, but for me, that never really warranted him.
Well,
Um,
no, again, it wasn't so much again him being a shit podcaster. Again, he's done other things. For example, he's taken liberties with veterans of the business, like Terry Funk being one of them. There's a clip of him basically brutally smacking Terry Funk and rupturing his eardrum.
oh
There's
fuck me.
there's again the Blood Hunter gimmick, which pretty much drove Selena De La Renta out of one of the territories. There was
Yeah,
the whole thing with Billy Jack Haynes. There's been a whole there was this interview with Wild Bill Irwin as well, where he just completely shit on him for being for being drunk. He insisted on carrying on with an interview with the fact, even though Wild Bill was quite clearly intoxicated, he carried on with the interview and then just called him a drunken piece of shit.
yeah. Well,
So
like I said,
again, he's a fucking embarrassment when it comes to podcasting, and also an embarrassment when it comes to professional wrestling. He's at one point, I think, probably going to be the subject of his own Dark Side of the Ring episode.
yeah. I guess. I mean, see what happens in the next few years. But yeah, it was interesting episode for me personally regarding this particular wrestler and the brutality of his matches and the influence that he had. He ended up getting into the WWE Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure he'll end up selling his ring,
He
to
did.
make some extra money.
Oh,
He
He
did.
sold the ring.
I'm not surprised. How much is
The
ring?
one guy who
A Hall of Fame? Yeah.
the one guy who didn't come off well in this as well, though, is Tony Atlas. Because
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Atlas,
we're talking about him having to defend, a turd sandwich or a douche. But
well,
yeah.
again, it was the fact that he said that he didn't think it was right that Hannibal sued over it because you accept risks going into it. Well, no, you don't typically accept the risk of contracting a bloodborne illness.
look, I agree. I just think unfortunately I don't I'm not condoning Tony Atlas. I just think that he's old and naive and just doesn't know any better. You
Very, very
know,
stupid is what I would say.
yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. But yeah, he didn't come. I mean, Mick Foley, he came out pretty well. I mean, but then again, Mick Foley's just awesome. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
you have to
So
actually try to not like Mick Foley.
I've actually seen him myself and Ginger. We saw him do stand up comedy, in Piccadilly Circus
How
about
I
was
10
he?
saw
years
him.
ago.
I saw him in Glasgow do that as well.
Well, he was more doing storytelling than stand up comedy, like storytelling, which was funny, than actual stand up comedy. But the other acts,
Hmm.
who supported Mick Foley, who like the warm up acts, they were stand up comedians who happened to be wrestling fans.
Yep.
And their jokes were brilliant. Now I'll be honest with you, I can't remember any of them. And back then, about 10 years ago, I was a massive wrestling fan. So I could relate to the jokes that they were saying, and I was dying, absolutely dying with laughter and stuff like that. Um, it was a great night. Me and Ginger, we had a great time, and Mick Foley himself, he's humongous, by the way. He's a big guy, man. You know what I mean? As well. Yeah, I had a really good time. Mick Foley's no stand-up comedian. He should stick to being a writer. But I think I think maybe it's to do with his comic timing. I'm not sure if he's naturally got that, and maybe he can work on it. I don't know. But yeah, just hearing some of his stories were pretty cool. But the jokes from the stand-up comedians, which were wrestling based, that was probably the best part of the night, in my opinion. So yeah. But yeah, Mick Foley in this documentary, he ended up looking pretty good. He done himself a lot of favors, and he spoke very candidly as well, and didn't beat around the bush. Admitted to the fact that he saw Abdullah the Butcher reading a menu, so he can possibly read and write, because of that. So yeah, regarding Abdullah the Butcher himself, seems to be a guy who's full of shit. But then again, the person that who is suing him also seems to be full of shit. They seem to be made for each other. And yeah, as you said earlier, Shredder, there's no faces in this one. Both of these guys are heels, and they deserve each other big time. Yeah. So yeah, a good episode. Were you on the market, Shred? What are you gonna give it?
Probably the weakest of the series so far. This is one I'm probably going to give just a 5 out of 10. Again, it was very competently made, but this was one of those episodes where there was no babyface at the end of this. There was no upside to any of it, or even something you could take away from it as something like generally an old practice of the business that has to go, that has gone to the wayside, and for all the right reasons. This was just yeah. I wouldn't say this is the worst episode that Dark Side of the Ring's ever done. I mean, that honor still goes to Nick Gage, but this was probably the weakest episode of this season so far. So yeah, 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Does his
to echo Shredder
sorry,
on
Dixie.
this.
No,
I'm
Dixie, one
sorry.
second. I'm gonna get you 1 second. Does Abby still own that restaurant? Abdullah the Butcher's
No.
ribs.
Abdullah the Butcher's House of Ribs and Chinese Restaurant. No, he does not still own it. He closed that
What
down
a
a few years
fucking
ago.
There's nothing worse than having a hybrid of fucking shit that doesn't belong with each other. Like in Hanger Lane in central London, there's a restaurant. It's no longer there anymore, and I can totally understand because the mix just seems wrong. But it was a Polish and Chinese restaurant. I forgot the name of it, but it's a Polish and Chinese cuisine. Like seriously, does that sound appealing to you? It doesn't sound appealing to me whatso fucking ever. And I like Polish food and I like Chinese food, but the mix, not for me. You know what I mean? So
Oh, there was
yeah.
Nick Goulis had he had a business venture where there was a restaurant he ran which was half Greek and half Chinese.
Oh god.
Now that sounds like a bad combination.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'm
Exactly.
hungover or something and really hungry, that'd be great hangover food, but that's about it.
Yeah. If I was desperate, yeah, for sure. Anyway, Dixie, what are you gonna give this episode?
I'm gonna give this episode, I'm gonna say a 5.5 out of 10. I liked it. The thing was, eh, can't really put my finger on specifics or whatever, but yeah, I'm gonna say it's about a 5. I like the
Yeah.
info, a lot of info I didn't know about Abdullah. But yeah, it was about one of the wrestlers that I really didn't know or honestly care about as much.
Freaking half Cheeto says. Yeah, I'll give him a break, but fair enough. And yeah, if only Beatlemaniacs is also giving it a 5. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of stuck between a 5 and a 6. I don't, sorry, not 5 and a 6, a 6 and a 7. I'll probably give it a 6 actually. And you guys kind of convinced me
You
that
dirty
maybe it's not.
contrarian.
Yeah, I did overall like this episode, enjoyed it, so it gets a slightly above average mark. But you are right. It's it's not as good as it can be, but there were moments in this episode that I found fascinating. Most notably, the crowd running in fear of their life. I'll never that image. That'll never leave my mind. Just seeing them shitting themselves, fantastic, and obviously the bleeding and everything that went with it, and the controversy with him and Hannibal. Usually, when it comes to some of these wrestlers, there's always something that's kind of stand out. It's like last week with Adrian Adonis. It was the fact that he played a gay character, and sometimes it's those sort of things that you wish Darkseid would delve in a little bit more because that's probably the standout element of that particular person. I'm not really sure what it would be regarding this particular episode regarding Abdullah the Butcher, but if it was the fact to do with his blood and gore and stuff, I think, or maybe the Devon Hannibal Nicholson thing, I think they gave enough credence to those situations, those scenarios, in this episode. So I can't fault it for that. But yeah, 6 out of 10 is what I'm going to give it. Um,
You could probably have a very very good documentary about Abdullah the Butcher in terms of his wrestling, at least the fact that he was a traveling monster, and obviously the style as well, because there were certain things that yeah, for his gimmick he did very very well. I mean, when he would, for example, at the start of the match, when he would start stalking his opponent. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that
was
was done really well.
that's fucking mesmerizing to watch. You know, not just the fact he's circling the ring and trying to lock up his opponent, the fact he's fucking stalking him.
Yeah.
Me, or the ways he would hide a fork from the referee over and over again. Like, for example, you know, a referee would go and check his waistband. Abdullah would hide it in his mouth. You know, the
Bloody
fans would be screaming, "Ref, he's got it in his fucking mouth!" You know, he takes it out and he sticks it right in his waistband again.
Yep.
Again, there were certain things he did very, very well, but it was a gimmick. It was a traveling attraction, sort of like Andre the Giant was in the Territory days, except
freak show
Andre could
circus.
actually fucking work.
Yeah, especially for Andre's size, he could work really well.
Yeah, and Andre had the ability of being both heel and face, while
Yep.
someone like Abdullah the Butcher could only ever be a heel. Um, Funny Peter Maniac says next week Bam Bam should be good as he was a legit in many ways the best big man
Yeah, he
of all
was.
time.
He's one of the best big men of all time, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and I'm looking forward to that, but it feels a bit tropey looking at the Bam Bam trailers. You know, wrestler, drugs, all of that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, we'll see how it goes, but he is a recognizable name. Bam Bam Bigelow. I was a big admirer of him when I was younger. And he seemed to be somebody who, and that was always my issue with wrestling and wrestlers. 1 minute they're there, and next thing you know, they just disappeared like they never existed in the fucking first place. And
Yeah.
WWE did that shit a lot, and it always fucking pissed me off. But now, as we've gotten older and we understand the industry a lot better, everything makes a lot more sense. So yeah. Um, yeah, so I said earlier, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I do look forward to next week. Bam Bam. Obviously, the one that I want to see the most is Marty Jannetty. How many episodes are there in this season?
3 left. So Bam Bam Bigelow, Bash at the Beach 2000, and then Marty Jannetty.
Ooh, they're doing Bash
Actually,
the Beach? Nice.
yeah. Actually, this is a nice way to end the season. Actually, because Bam Bam will be an interesting episode. I don't think it'll blow us away. I think it'll be quite run of the mill regarding um regarding his fall from grace. Bash at the Beach would be interesting, but we don't get enough episodes where we're following maybe not necessarily a wrestler, but a pay per view or a territory or something like that. And it'd be nice to have something based around that, like or like the Plane Rhyme for Hells, something based around a particular scenario, a particular situation that has been like renowned in wrestling history. So I'm looking forward to the Bash of the Beach episode, just for that to hear all the stories. And finally, Marty Jannetty. I mean, I'm surprised he's still with us. So we'll see how that pans out. But if they're going to leave that one until the end, then fingers crossed it's a doozy, because I'm sure there's a lot to say. And it's a shame that Shawn Michaels won't be talking about that, to give his opinions on all of that. But yeah. All
Certain
right. So
aspects of the
okay.
Bigelow episode, I'm hoping they delve into a little bit more. For example, his career before he got into wrestling as a bounty hunter. I'd like to hear a little
Ooh,
bit
I'd
more
like to hear
about
about
that.
that too. I'd also like to hear a little bit
Okay.
about what he did after wrestling, such as acting. He was in, I know, one movie, Major Pain. Yeah.
Well,
Al- Also, to hear from
uh,
some of his peers with regards to how he fucking carried Lawrence Taylor through
Oh,
WrestleMania.
yes.
oh yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. On top of that, I'm not sure if you guys ever watched The Young Rock. Did you watch that at all, Shredder?
No, can't say I did.
I
Because
can't say I did either.
don't get me wrong, Young Rock did put a sort of comical spin on everything Dwayne Johnson did when he was younger. But Bam Bam Bigelow did play a part of his life when he was a kid. He knew him. His dad worked with him and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see how much of those elements which have been comically portrayed in the Young Rock match what we see if we do get any of that in next week's documentary on Bam Bam Bigelow. So I'm looking forward to it if any of that crosses over in any capacity whatsoever. So um, yeah, I'm looking forward to that Bam Bam Bigelow, man. Fucking awesome. Loved his attire. Anyway, Dixie Shredder, thank you very much for joining me and everyone out there in YouTube land. Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
having me.
much. You're welcome, dude. And thank you very much for joining us here at NerdTube. We'll be back tomorrow talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, as well as the Sodomizer podcast on Fridays as well. So join us for that. And keep an eye out for other stuff as well, because here at NerdTube, we do everything. Take care now, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Adios. Peace.